Hello and welcome to Game Brain, a board game podcast about our gaming group. I'm Ben Mandelker, reunited with Trey Alsop. Hey Trey, what's going on?
I am not the host. Ben is the host.
Trey is you are not the host.
I am not the host.
I am steering this ship today.
We are in Ben's studio with Ben's computer.
Yeah.
Ben is the host.
Yeah. And I'm on a power trip. And we have a new voice, a guest, Chris Bussey. What's going on, Chris?
Hey, thanks for having me. I appreciate
Who are
it.
you? Who are you, Chris Bussey?
Who are you?
I'm just a guy who likes to play games with y'all.
He was our Postmates. We ordered Postmates. We said, you know what? You look like you like games. And he just walked in, sat down and said, not only do I like to play games, I'm ready to podcast with you guys.
This is false modesty. Chris, you are a video game producer?
I am. I've been in video games for about 30 years. I started playing games with you guys. I think I started playing with Tom last century.
Yeah.
At various Strategicons, and then took a little time off to raise my kids, and now I'm back enjoying the hobby.
Yeah.
Trying to remember how that connection came about, but like our good friend Mark now is part of your original crew.
Yeah.
Wow.
Who's been a big part of Tom and my LARP adventures at Gen Con over the year, and is also an advisor to me at Wishcraft Simulations. And Chris is now also a consultant for Wishcraft Simulations.
Very exciting.
Was a big help on my my latest virtual reality experience that's opening soon.
I know.
Let me just go right into it then. Hey, public. March 25th.
Oh, it's that soon?
Yeah, the Medal of Honor Museum is opening March 25th to the public. You can go there and you can experience Dust Off Coming to the Rescue, a virtual reality experience, which I designed, and is all about being a crewman on a dust-off helicopter in 1968 Vietnam War. You are a member of a crew, a medevac crew that goes out into the jungle and is rescuing wounded American servicemen from the jungle and getting them back to a hospital to get medical care and trying not to get shot down.
Having gotten an inside look at it, I can say it's amazing. I was totally blown away.
I didn't realize, you were saying it's crunch time. I didn't realize like it's crunch time. Like the teeth are in the burger and things are crunching. Like that's 2 weeks away.
That's right. We've installed it. They're running a version of it now and kind of training, preparing for the public, but we're continuing to work and iron out all the last final kinks to make it flawless.
Okay. And remind everyone again which museum it's at.
This is at the Medal of Honor Museum, which is a brand new museum that's opening in Arlington, Texas. Arlington is the space in between Dallas and Fort Worth, where AT&T Stadium, where the Dallas Cowboys play, where the Texas Rangers play, where Six Flags Over Texas is. So it's kind of convenient to both people. So if you're going out to BGG Con this year, maybe a little day trip out to the Medal of Honor Museum.
I'll be in Dallas in May. So if I have time, I will try to see your hard work.
Swing on by.
That's amazing. I had no idea it was that close. I thought crunch time just meant like you were 3 months away.
No. When I was ranting and raving earlier about how much work was still to be done and how people were taking vacation,
yeah,
I was not kidding around.
Oh, that's wild. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, congratulations on coming towards the end of that project. You were just gone for like a month. It seemed like for a very long time in Texas.
I was.
So
and because of the theory of relativity, every day you spend in Texas seems like more like a week.
Yeah. That does happen.
I've aged 3 or 4 years in the month that I was in Texas, but I did get COVID. That was one of the reasons it took so long. Is I got COVID for a week or 10 days really, and lost a bunch of work.
Wow.
But
well, I'm glad you're back. I'm glad you're done with COVID. I'm glad you're almost done with this project. Chris, it's great having you here on the podcast because we have some really fun games to talk about. We're going to review SETI today. It's a game we've talked about a good amount over the past few months, but we haven't actually sat down and reviewed it.
Right.
So we're going to go deeper with it.
Thank you for waiting for me, Ben, because you knew I really had strong feelings.
It was my pleasure. It was my pleasure. We have all these games that we still have to review. I think like after we did our year-end best of 2024, it kind of felt like we had reviewed them all, but we had just sort of surfacely talked about them. But we still have many games to do deep dives on. So we did.
Where did SETI end up collectively? And was it like number 3?
Yeah, I think that's right.
It was high. It did very well in our game group. And so we'll obviously in the
end, what ARCs and
I don't think Arcs was number one. Civolution, I think.
Civolution. Those were the two I thought were higher.
I think Civolution was number one, and was Arcs number two?
Arcs was two, and then SETI, I think.
Okay, that makes sense. Those are three of the big games of the year, and for our group. So we'll talk about SETI. Before we dive into that, though, we got to talk about some recent plays. I'm going to start this one because this will be the shortest one because I'm the only one here who has played it. But my copy of Galactic Cruise came in.
Right.
Have you guys heard of Galactic Cruise? Do you know anything about it?
Only what you've talked about.
Okay.
Yes.
Well,
I remember Candace playing it at BGG Con last year, and it seemed like it was a beast. But I think she had a tough first place. So am I getting it right that the concept here is almost like a intergalactic cruise liner? It's a space-based cruise liner, so kind of Fifth Element-y, and this is why we were discussing that earlier. And you have never seen it.
I would not know. I have no idea what I have no idea what number element it actually would be. I just if it's the fifth, then sure. But I have not seen any movie that gives me any sort of frame of reference on which element is which number. So. I'll just take your word for it that this is very Fifth Element.
It's very Fifth Element.
Okay.
It's a portion of Fifth Element.
Yes. I think on the last podcast, I said I was excited that the game is arriving. The game has arrived.
And you've had to play.
And I've had to play. I actually did an unboxing video for it. I don't know what possessed me because I never do unboxing videos, but I decided just to do one. I think I was bored. So you can check that out. I had a very sassy unboxing. And the most embarrassing part about it is that this whole unboxing, and I didn't lift up the final tray, and under the final tray was where all the cardboard cutouts were. So I was like, oh, that's the final tray, because I didn't realize, and then I closed it back all up again. So there's an entire section that I never even talked about. I didn't talk about the cardboard. I can say the cardboard is very good. So for people who felt like there was a gap in my unboxing, to the 10 people who watched it and who felt like it needed further unboxing, I can say that the cardboard, the quality of the components is actually excellent. But I did play it. So my concern going into playing the game was that this was like a big, cool game, but was it kind of like all gloss and maybe not so interesting of a game. But I actually really enjoyed my first play. And I had played it on Tabletop Simulator last year. And on Tabletop Simulator, you can only do the intro setup, which is like all the action spaces are kind of like pre-printed on the board. It's like every action space is paired with another. In the game, in order to get your cruises launched and it's all the logistics of that, you do all these basically worker placement, and every spot you go to, there's usually 2 actions on that spot, and you can do them in any order. And so the intro game, the actions are they're printed on there and they're paired in a way that you can have a smooth experience. Mm-hmm. So it's like, this action lets you get blueprints. This action lets you actually turn your blueprints into something on your spaceship. And so are
we building a cruise liner?
We're doing everything. We are building your spaceships, and the spaceships are going to have different areas in them for different experiences. Like maybe there might be like a yoga experience on your spaceship, or maybe there's a climbing wall, or maybe there's a martini lounge.
So it's more like you're building an amusement park kind of.
Well,
thing.
It's not really amusement. Well,
that's what cruises are these days.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, because the thing is this: the game, you are also trying to market to different passengers. So some passengers are looking for a family experience on their Galactic Cruise. So think like the Disney cruises, like Moana or whatever
versus Viking,
and then there are some that are some passengers are interested in kind of like relaxation, like a yoga moment, maybe. Some are looking for adventure, and so they might do rock climbing.
Is there extraterrestrial life on this Galactic Cruise?
So far, no, I haven't seen any. Maybe
so. It's human passengers.
It's all human. Okay. This is all like, because you're going to go up into space with your spaceship. And when your passengers are on the spaceship, you have these different areas because this way they have stuff to do when they're in space. But then you also go to different planets and you get off at different planets and people walk around the planets and have a great time. So
when you go up into space, is there a chance that you explode and rain debris across the Gulf of Mexico? Excuse me, the Gulf of America.
Gulf of America,
excuse me. Don't at me.
I saw a meme that said Gulf of like Elon Musk's like debris, like whatever, like
SpaceX
trash. That does not. There are no explosions in this game.
Okay. It's
Although
not
if
a
you play
deadly cruise.
if you play Leaving Earth, that could happen. But it's kind of fun. Like as I'm telling you about it, it's cool that the game actually incorporates all these elements. But what I was just trying to say was that 2 actions in a game are like get blueprints and build the blueprints into things. And so in the intro game, if you go to one area, those actions are right next to each other. So you can do like a 1-2 hit.
Okay.
But in the sort of like standard game or advanced game, you kind of put the actions out randomly. And that, to me, I think the big takeaway I have from my first play was how that really improved the game, because it's really hard to do things now because things are not paired in a logical way. So you have to go here first and then there. And it's really a game of tempo, and it's a racing game. And like, as soon as someone starts doing really well, you feel that pressure to like get your cruises going, but you have to, there's not an efficient way to do all your actions because they're sort of spread out. So that's my way of saying first playthrough, I really enjoyed it a lot. I think Trey, you will definitely enjoy it. I think Chris, I think you might like it, but I think for sure, Trey, you'll enjoy it. So it's gonna be a fun one to introduce to you guys.
Looking forward to getting into the table.
Yeah. So we'll have more reports on that, I'm sure, and probably a review at some point or another. And by the way, that game is designed by TK King, Dennis Northcutt, and Colton Thompson,
with art by
Ian O'Toole. You can look at it and you will see it's such an Ian O'Toole game. It's so Ian O'Toole. But another game that was played while Trey was off in Texas, we got to playing some games, and Chris and I, as well as our sweet, sweet Jordan, the 3 of us played 1817.
We certainly did.
Chris, do you want to tell people about what 1817 is all about? Do you feel comfortable doing that, or do you want me to do it?
I don't mind jumping in on some commentary. I mean, it's an 18XX game. I would say it's amongst the heaviest of the 18XXs. Mm-hmm. So if you enjoy the kind of full experiences with the loans and the placement and controlling multiple corporations and having to stay on top of not just your actions, but everybody else's actions the whole time through, then this is certainly up your alley.
Yeah, this is, I think, considered one of the big daddies of 18XX. Like, this one is like given
maximum pain kind of
maximum pain. I will say this. So I don't give a lot of credence to basically like the heaviness scale on BGG, because I think it's nebulous.
But
like, because I don't know, is heaviness, is that rules, is it strategy, is it time, is it whatever? It's hard to know. But what I do know is that it comes in at a 4.79 out of 5. Yeah. And that at my collection is by far the heaviest game that I have. And I don't know too many other games that are heavier than that. And
right.
This is, I feel like, an 18XX game where I think if you can play it, if you can get through it, like, you've earned, I think, like a red badge of honor.
It definitely feels like a throwback to last century 18XX games, like big weight games where you sat down and played all night through the night and,
to the morning.
Yeah.
To dawn.
Till dawn. Yes.
So Chris, Jordan, and I, we gathered at my place at 3 p.m. on a Friday, and admittedly, that's kind of late to start 1817. But I had to work. It was Friday. I had to work.
As soon as we could get there.
That was as soon as we could do it. We sat down. We set it up. We went over some rules, refreshed some rules, because you guys had never played it before,
right?
But you guys had learned the rules, but we still went over some stuff. We had our initial auction, right, where there's a big auction phase in the game,
right? And
then we had a very late lunch at like 5:00.
Yep.
So long story short is, again, we sat down at 3. Chris and Jordan did not leave my house until 5:30 in the morning.
That's correct.
What? Sounds great.
It was amazing.
It was absolutely amazing.
I would say right at about 5, everybody started to kind of, you could tell the energy was dropping, but
because we could see it, we were so close to the end.
We were close, so we were just muscling through. But 3:30, 4 o'clock, I felt totally on top of it. And that was your energy and Jordan's too.
I will say the game was so riveting that I felt often tired but not sleepy, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Like I was like, okay, I'm tired. I'm tired right now, but I wasn't like falling asleep at the table. And I wasn't saying how much longer is this going on. It was like, I felt like every turn was very fascinating. It was like you couldn't wait to see what was going to happen next. And that's always been my experience playing it online, because I've really only played it online. And I played like a quarter of a game in person once. But this is my first time doing a proper game of 1817 in person. And I've found, I'm like, this is my number one 18XX for a reason. And I hadn't played it in so long that I was starting to think other titles may have been. But I was like, no, this game is so good. There's so much in it. There's so many choices you can make more. Given that 18XX already has such a deep roster of decisions to make on any given turn, this one, it's wild. It's tense.
It's amazing. And I mean, you literally have to pay attention to not just your turn, but at what everybody else's turn is and what they're doing, and then be considering what the impact of what that's going to be on your turn the next time around. And it just grabs a hold of you and doesn't let go.
Right, for those people who haven't played it before, what makes 1817 different than other 18?
Okay, so what it is known for, given like you have sort of the standard 18XX things in it, it's known for a few things. Just broadly speaking, this is known to be the one that has the most like financial shenanigans. I don't know if there are games that have more, but this one's sort of known for its financial shenanigans, meaning that in this game, your companies can take loans, which then drives there's a whole thing where like, as you take loans, interest rates go up and you sort of are in this quagmire of deciding when to repay and when to pay the interest. So that's a whole decision space. But this one also has something that I have not seen in any other game except for games that have descended from 1817, which is the ability to sell short shares. And you can short these companies. So if you think a company is doing badly, you can essentially kind of like short them. You get essentially cash
instantly.
And but then you're liable to close your short position, and that can go awry very easily.
The funny thing about our particular play that night was that I think because it was still our first experience as a group together with it, we all played Run Good Company's 18XX
for the most part. Yeah.
For the most part. And so everybody who shorted, and there were, I don't know, a handful of short attempts, all ended up on the bad side of the deal. Like anybody who attempted to short just got...
because everybody was a responsible owner.
Because the bad side of the deal is what you want to do with shorting in 1817 is you're shorting a company that you think is going to lose value. Because to close, you're basically, if Chris's company is $100 of market value and you short it, you're going to get $100 of cash. And then there's this kind of like pink scary share that's out there that says like, ooh, there's a short that's out there. And essentially you want to close out your position, aka you want to buy back that pink share
at less than what you paid.
Yeah, later on. So ideally, if you got $100, like you want his value to drop to $50, so that way when you buy that pink share back and you're no longer liable for it, then you have received 100 but only paid 50. You made a $50 profit.
And if nothing else, you've also gotten a loan.
Exactly. You basically got $100 to basically feed into your engine. However, every time that company pays out a dividend, then you have to pay that dividend out as well, and to the bank. I'm not going to try to get too far in the weeds with it, but the point is that you have certain financial obligations, and so like if it goes wrong, it's a great situation. But if it goes wrong for the company, it's a great situation for you. Right. But if it goes right for the company, you could be. I actually wound up in trouble at one point. I wound up in a cash crisis. Remember that?
Yeah.
My short situation came back to haunt me, but it was like kind of worth it because I used that cash to start up another thing, and the scores were very close. I mean, Jordan won by I think like $100, $200
like
in a game where I think he won. He had like $15,000 or $14,000.
Yeah.
Like he had like 14,500 and I had 14,300. It's really close.
Yeah. It was very close.
And there's like all sorts of other things. There's what's cool is every action seems to have like a counter. So, it's an amazing game to explore. And the three of us have decided that we are going to explore it more. I was bummed because I Jordan was reaching out I think about a week ago to play it some more, and I just was not able to, and I won't be able to for the next few weekends. But
I think he and I are going to get together and try and get a rep or two in.
Yeah, well, we can also play it online too, by the way. It's on 18xx.games, which is a great way to play it, but it's so good. It was just, I don't know, that's going to be one of my, at the end of the year, that's definitely going to probably be one of my favorite game sessions of the year.
I've played a few of the 18xx's where loans were involved, but they're different in 17 where the loans are really a tool for the president to manipulate the stock price and create opportunities and turn order and doubling up or, paying off and stuff like that, moving your stock value up and then repaying those loans. Like it felt much more like a piece that the president had control of, as opposed to, oh, well, I guess I have to take this loan so I can do anything. It was more like, oh, I'm going to use this to further my advancement and crush my opponents even more.
Yeah, it's wild. You'd hate it, Trey. You'd hate every single thing about it, I think.
It's hard to say. Probably. Sounds like a lot. Staying up till 5:30, that seems like a lot.
I mean, I'm sure also it's a long game, and if someone's not doing well in the game, they may feel trapped.
Oh, you're really, really trapped.
But I don't know. Like it felt like
I respect these games. It's more like I'm keeping myself from getting sucked into them. Like I'm not spending the effort to really understand them out of some kind of self-preservation here.
It's probably smart.
By the way, BGG is saying that it's called 1817 because that's the year that the New York Stock Exchange opened, and this game introduces a lot of the kind of more sophisticated financial
and the box
things. Like in addition to short selling, there's market-driven interest rates, hostile takeovers, and corporate liquidations.
Oh yeah, there's this whole. That's the other thing. There's a lot of 18xx games have mergers and stuff like that, but this one has like mergers with a capital M. Like it's mergers, it's liquidations, it's acquisitions, it's friendly takeover. The number of tools you can use in this game to get an advantage is absolutely wild. Yeah. And in fact, I think I would have won had I been more aggressive with shorting, because there's one point where Jordan was very vulnerable, and I thought that he had all two trains and he could have been totally rusted away. And I was trying to make that happen. And I shorted him just like one share. And what I really needed to do is do like a 5-share short, get a lot of cash and use that cash to start a new company, get some of those trains, and then help. That would have been devastating. But then I would have been liable for all that stuff. So who knows? I would have gone probably into my own abyss.
We flirted one time. There was, I forget which stock it was down near the liquidation area. And through shorting and coordination, you can force a stock into acquisition and liquidation. And I think we flirted with it. You were entertaining the idea for a minute, and we didn't pull the trigger on it. But that's one of the things that I'm totally looking forward to really exploring is getting more aggressive for those shorts. Because I think we were timid.
Although the thing is, right out of the gate, our first round, we did something that I've never, ever, ever done. I've played 1817 probably about 5 or 6 times online, which is that I started a company in South New York, on the space in South New York, and Chris laid an aggressive tile where he blocked me off before I could even run. And so that company was just going to lose value. So I just let it liquidate. I liquidated it, and I saved it from liquidation with another company, and I basically got essentially a cheap token out of it. But it was like, oh, this is so cool that I never even considered this as a tool in this game. But all these rules and devices and mechanics are in the game, so you can use them for fun and interesting ways. And it's a game that just always evolves in such fascinating ways that you can do so much with it. It is kind of like a big chaotic sandbox, and it was just tremendous. It was just tremendous game. So I'm really glad we got that to the table. And then I have an update about something, which is that I did get to play another game of Twilight Imperium last weekend. And all I'm going to say is Paul made someone cry. So that is the update.
Again.
Yeah.
Was it the same person, or is this a new crier?
It was the same person.
Okay.
But the point is, there was, once again, no one seems to really emerge from Twilight Imperium these days without getting some
Paul hate.
Without getting, not Paul, but it's there's always going to be some elbows thrown, and it's just amazing how it happens consistently every single time.
Congratulations, Paul.
Congratulations, Paul. Big time. By the way, Chris, so you played, speaking of 18XX, you played Railways of the Lost Atlas for the first time. What did you think?
I liked it so much, I ordered it right after we got done playing it, and it just arrived this morning. So I'm looking forward to unboxing it.
Yeah, you came trotting in with it under your hand. It's still in the plastic.
Yeah, I mean, the thing that I'm really excited about it, and the reason why I got it versus some of the others, is the micro games that it has, the ability to play a 2-player version of 18XX in, I won't say introductory just because it's hard to call anything 18XX introductory, but small, fast games that you could play with somebody and get somebody who may be reluctant to jump in to go in there. And so I'm really excited about that because I don't know, I've been playing 1830 for, 25, 30 years, and I love it. I'm totally fascinated with it. I think we were just talking right before we played today that I was already starting to think about, I want to make a California version of an 18XX game.
Yeah,
because there's a lot of really fascinating history with the California railroads as well.
There must be some.
Probably is.
There must be some.
I mean, again,
California.
and I mentioned there's like 18 West, which I've never played, which is about like expansion westward, and there is 18 Los Angeles, but I don't know if there's like an 18XX that's purely like about California. Let's see, 18XX California. I don't see any off the. I'm sure there
18
is.
Los Angeles.
Yeah, that's about like the red lines and the
18 Los Angeles is so good. I will love it. I want to get a copy of it, but I just don't know if it's for sale. I'm really glad you liked Atlas. We talked about it so much on this podcast, so there's no reason to go over it some more, but we definitely had a very fun and chaotic play of it.
And we had Drew with us it was you, me, Jordan, and Drew.
Yeah, that was Drew's first time playing 18XX, and it seemed like he had a good time. But it was definitely a situation where you and Jordan just created so much chaos at the table that I just sat back and I won. And I want to say like I threw the spanner in the works that caused the chaos. I did nothing. I just sat there, and you guys did some.
We were coming into
nihilistic, crazy shit.
We were coming into the last rounds. I looked at my position on the board and I realized that I was well behind you, and I thought I was maybe behind Drew at the time. And I was sitting there with running a corporation and going, if I just run this to the end, I'm going to finish in second or third. And I was like, I'm not here to finish second or third. I'm here to try and win.
That's exactly the mindset of 18XX. I feel like 18XX is the only space in my life where I become fearless. I feel like I'm a timid person, generally speaking. Like my approach to talking with, confronting people, talking to people, doing things, going after stuff. But when it comes to 18XX, I definitely have a mindset of like, if you're not coming in first, you just got to take a crazy big swing. Otherwise, you're just. And I do crazy shit in 18XX. And like, I don't know what it is. There's something about the game that just says like, you better go for it. Right. Like, cause I feel like with like a Euro, you can just kind of have your engine or do your thing and you plug away and you're like, I think this is going to work. But look, 18XX, a lot of times you can sort of look around and say, I think I'm in a decent position, but I also don't think I'm moving unless I have to be a disruptor right now. I have to either do something crazy that will hopefully like it's like Mad Max. Hopefully if I swerve here, it's going to catch someone off guard and they're going to swirl out and cause a car crash behind me.
Yeah, it's funny that night it only took like 4 hours to finish the full round, the full game. But that last stock round was like an hour of it.
Yeah. Because
full turnover of companies and people buying up and selling off and buying up and selling off. It was
Chris and Jordan were basically like you tried to do something crazy. Yeah. You basically like you sold your position in a company and you were going to start a new one. But then Jordan was like, aha, I'm going to do that. I'm going to do something crazy too. So then he started doing it, which ruined your plans. And then all of a sudden everyone was selling stock and like getting out. And it was wild and
so much fun.
I loved it because Railways of the Lost Atlas is known for being more of a, like a run good companies game. And so it was cool that there was this very aggressive, wild, chaotic stock round.
I do want to take a second to talk about how much I appreciated the visual and graphic updates that Railways did to the general system. Like all of the trains are color coded to the shifts in the phases of the game. The cards all work together. You sit there and you run the two minor companies and then you put the major company over it.
Yeah, that's fun.
And it fits in perfectly. Like somebody really I just really
Although,
classed it up.
I think though, just to be fair, and I know because someone will listen and say, "Hey, I think the trains are color coded in many other 18xx games too."
Could be.
So there is that. But yes, they did do a great.
There's the age coloring. That's the one I know about.
Yeah,
But you're saying there's more than that?
The trains in this game, well, they're vertical. They did a great job in the presentation of that. But that was a super fun game. And then in terms of Trey, were you able to get any other plays in this past few weeks, or you just been in work, just stuck
on my own little island? I mean, I've been playing a ton of solo through the ages, but that doesn't mean anything.
Yeah, I played. I played a game of Whistle Mountain a few days ago with Candace. Whistle Mountain came out a few years ago, and that was a very fun and wonky game. It's like
that's got to be a train game.
It's not.
Whistle Mountain is not a train game. Okay.
So there was a game called Whistle Stop.
Yes,
which was trainy. It's from, I think, Bezier.
What is the theme of Whistle Mountain?
So Whistle Mountain, I think, is kind of like extending the Whistle Stop universe. And in Whistle Mountain, there's like a canyon, and you're building like a scaffolding, like kind of building like a dam or something in this canyon. And then as you build the scaffolding, you then are building machines into the scaffolding. And then you have like blimps and balloons and airships, kind of steampunky, that land on the scaffolding and on the machines and activate them. And it makes no sense. But then also, like, as you build the scaffolding, as it gets higher and higher, the canyon, the water in the bottom of the canyon starts to rise. Because
are there gnomes?
There are no gnomes, but your meeples can get, if the water rises and your meeples are there, your meeples can get like swept into the water, and so then that's gonna be negative points. And so you're trying to build up but save your meeples, and it was a whole wild. It's a strange game, but it was very fun. It's like a little too swingy. For my taste, and I don't usually say that, but like it feels like it could have used like a little bit more development, but it was also a surprisingly fun game. It was one of those games where every time you do something, you create an opportunity for someone else, and I love when a game does that. Like you build one thing in the canyon, but it creates an opportunity for someone else to build a machine on the thing that you just built, and then when you do that, you're creating an opportunity for someone else to come and exploit the machine, and yada yada yada. So. That was a fun one worth checking out. If you see it, it's one of those things. If you see it like in a bargain bin, it's might be worth the money. Like, it was very fun. I enjoyed it quite a bit. There were other games, but why don't we talk about SETI? I'm
refraining from making more Whistle Mountain jokes.
No, make all the Whistle Mountain jokes you want to make. It's there. It's there for the taking. I think there were some other games I just can't remember, and I didn't write down.
But sure, let's talk about SETI.
Yeah, let's talk about SETI. So, SETI, Search for Extraterrestrial Intelligence, designed by Thomas Holek.
Right, and I had not played anything else that this designer has done, but I do know what people have a lot of nice things to say about Galileo Galilei also that kind of came out. And Teagarden.
Teagarden. People really like Teagarden.
Okay, so Galileo Galilei's 2024, also Teagarden 2024. So this guy clearly had some stuff.
He released 3 things last year.
The hopper, and
it was like a big blockbuster coming out.
He's arrived on the scene, Thomas Holek.
Yeah.
From the Czech Republic. This is a Czech Games edition game, and they've got a pretty good track record. Those Czech games, people
they do
pretty much everything
Code
that
names.
they make.
Through the Ages, you just mentioned.
Yeah, Through the Ages. And last year we really enjoyed Katnahora, which may not have been a huge hit, but I still thought was kind of brilliant.
Tremendous game.
Yeah. So I'll play anything that Czech Games comes out with, and this is no exception.
So tell us a little bit about the game. How does it work? What's it about, and how does it work?
Okay, well, this is a game that rates very high on like Trey's quality index because its theme and its mechanisms are so perfectly integrated together. You are searching for extraterrestrial life. The game is about finding traces of alien life. And once you have kind of like put together 3 different types of traces, you discover aliens that are coming into contact with Earth. And in every game, there are 2 potential alien species. And you kind of slowly determine them, then they're revealed, which causes a major pivot in how the game is played. But what are you actually doing on your turn? The actual gameplay involves kind of like either scanning certain parts of the sky in order to kind of get data on certain areas, kind of like you could scan, if you complete a scan of a certain portion of the sky, that's going to give you a trace. If you kind of analyze a bunch of data from scanning the sky and put that all together, that's a different type of trace. You could also get traces from going out into the solar system with probes and landing on planets or putting them in orbit around planets. And kind of central to all of this in terms of like impressive board mechanisms that rivals something like Tzolk'in. You have a model of the solar system that is, as you play the game and completing certain actions, rotating, so that the center of the solar system is rotating very fast. The outside of the solar system is rotating much slower. But you have this picture of the solar system where you have, if you're trying to do certain things, like I'm trying to land a probe on Saturn, you do have like a launch window where if I'm going to get all the way out to Saturn, I have to kind of hip hop in an intelligent way to use, the energy that I have available to me to get out there. And so you're often in the position of waiting for the heavens to turn to do the things that you want to do. And it's a very impressive set of rings in the center that kind of drives the core gameplay of what you're doing. But you're scanning, you're launching probes, you're moving probes, you're landing or putting things into orbit. And it has a very strong card-based system as well that is fairly reminiscent of something like a Terraforming Mars, where Terraforming Mars, for example, you might have some kind of like base actions like I can build a city for 25 credits, or I have a card that's going to let me do it cheaper with some other requirements, whatever. It's kind of a similar thing here where you have some cards that give you some efficiency bonuses when you use them. And so like, how do you leverage the cards that are in your hand in order to do certain things? But these cards also feel very modern in that every single card has like at least 3 different ways in which you can use it. And we can probably think of more as we go, because it both has like an action that you can complete by paying the cost of the card. You can also discard it for a resource.
It's like 3 to 4 things. It's like you can discard a card to get something. You can actually play the card, spending the cost of the card and get what the card is, sort of like the main gist of the card. Or you can tuck the card
for income,
to get income. And if it's a certain type of card, the card will maybe give you some sort of like passive benefit when you do certain things. It's sort of like a goal. Like if you do that, if you send your probe
their
to
contracts.
Mercury, you might get like you might get a perk.
Yeah, you get points for completing a certain number of contracts. And there's even like every single card has a certain color associated with it that corresponds to a certain, part of the sky, so that like, hey, I can burn this card when I'm scanning in order to get another scan of the blue sector, that type of thing. So kind of in almost a Carl Chudok way. And even more so than something like Terraforming Mars, these cards in your hand are quite flexible in terms of how you actually use them.
Yeah. So that's basically the gist of it, is that you're moving around this solar system, and you're doing card play. Like, I think that's sort of that is like kind of gets to the most reductive version of what the game is. But I think like what the game will be known for and famous for and remembered most for is its big spinny middle section. Like that board that spins around, it is visually very, very striking. And I always like to start talking about just how the game looks in presentation before we dive into it.
Yeah.
And I think here it's really noteworthy because you have this, first of all, the game is huge in terms of like, it takes up a lot of space on your table. So just know that if table space is a concern for you, you do have to consider that with this game. But also the spinning solar system it's striking. It is visually striking. Does it feel like this is a gimmick, or does it feel like, Chris, what do you think? Do you think it's a gimmick, or this is like they really use this?
I thought it was a gimmick going in. I was like, oh, okay, cool. Absolutely not. Totally tied in, totally captures your attention, because you think, oh, okay, I'm going to launch off to Jupiter in my next turn. And then by the time your next turn comes around, somebody's rotated it 3 different ways and you're past Jupiter and you can't go there anymore.
Yeah.
And so the feel of the spinning of the solar system tied into the theme of what's going on and the direct impact it has on your decisions in the game totally works.
Yeah. And thematically, it's so strong. It really does feels like you're your things are traveling through space. It's not like you are on a board and you're moving from like hex to hex or spot to spot. You feel like you are part, like there is a movement and you're with it. Like you said, there's like Trey, you said like the launch windows, if you feel the pressure of a launch window and you're waiting for opportunities. And it also is a great kind of, it's a great source of interaction in the game, because one of the main ways that those circles move is that there is a track for publicity, because as you do different things in this game, you get greater publicity. And every time, anytime you want to do research in this game, you spend publicity, which sort of seems like a strange resource to spend for research, but it actually makes thematic sense. It's like, you've earned a lot of goodwill and attention, so that's given you whatever kind of like nebulous resources, pun intended, nebula. Trey, anyone?
I'm nodding.
Okay.
I'm nodding condescendingly.
But the idea is that you're using whatever capital you've gotten from all your publicity to be able to get a technological advancement, right? And I think that's really cool. But anyway, when you do that, when you research a tech to make your game better, the rings move. They move in different ways depending on.
Yeah, there's 3 rings and they move at different rates. Right?
Yeah, they're at different rates, which is also thematic. But what's the point of this all is that if you see someone has a certain amount of publicity, they're probably going to spend that soon, and the universe is gonna advance forward. So then you're thinking like, well, I want to launch my probe, or I want to do this thing, but this board is about to change, and if I don't move my probe right now, I'm going to be that much farther away from Saturn, or maybe I'll be that much closer to Saturn.
And then in addition to just location, also to aim what you're aiming at for your scans changes based on where you're rotating as well. The rings they obstruct each other. So some things come into play or go out of play that you were maybe counting on. Oh, I have a card that, gives me more publicity for asteroids.
Comets are revealed.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And those come and go as the board switches. And I was paying attention at the end of this last playthrough that we did, and a comet didn't show up for 2.5, 3 rounds, most of the game.
Yeah,
it was there early, and then they all went away, and I went, I guess I'm not playing those cards.
Mm-hmm. Right.
Yeah, so it's kind of like a living, breathing solar system.
Yeah, it was really cool.
You really feel it, and it does. Like you have certain things go around very quickly, and other orbits take longer, which feels appropriate for what we know about astronomy. Yeah,
I mean, this is not as heavy as something like High Frontier that has a beautiful map where you're plotting out your path through the solar system,
or leaving Earth,
and doing. I haven't played leaving Earth, but like the map of High Frontier is very sophisticated with all of these places where you what's the Lagrange points in order to kind of catapult yourself out and where you can change your point of view or where you're going. Anyway, highly sophisticated, but as sophisticated as that map is, it's static. Mm-hmm. It doesn't change as you go, whereas this map is constantly changing. Like time is a really active participant in this game, and I think one of the things that time plays with, it's not just these launch windows. The game is a series of races. And this is, again, what can be delightful about the game, because we're in a series of races.
Pun intended again. 2 alien races come up.
Good point, Ben. But we are racing for a number of things in this game, and it can often be frustrating when you lose races, because we are racing both to kind of like find traces of certain aliens so that we're a part of it, because we're very much rewarded if you are one of the kind of like people who made an initial trace on an alien when it gets revealed. But then we're also like, we have these races to complete scanning certain sectors, and you can kind of get skunked by somebody who comes in and kind of steals a sector from you in a way that can be quite painful. But the time aspect of this game is really critical, and it is controlled by other people. Like sometimes it works out nicely for you, sometimes it doesn't. But like you were saying, you're always trying to anticipate what other people are doing, and God forbid you pass and then your turn, because the game can be in a radically different state before you take another action again. maybe 30 minutes later, you have surrendered your ability to control things at all when you pass. I mean, usually don't have a choice,
right?
But you may think you know the way things are going to go, and then people's card play changes things.
This game really literalizes the concept of like watching the world go by. Like, if you pass, you are literally watching worlds go by, and you're watching that board rotate, and you see opportunities come and things happen and everything. And by the way, that's also kind of a space of delight in the game, which is that, you're doing your thing and you look up and you look at the solar system, you're like, wait a second, how did I wind up over there? Wait a second, I'm next to Neptune now. I have to reconsider things because while I was looking down at my cards, you did something that made it rotate, then you did something that made it rotate, and something else happened, and then all of a sudden I'm in a whole different. Not only
I'm going to Neptune.
Yeah, suddenly I've rotated 180 degrees around the sun, and the board has done crazy things, and now I'm next to an opportunity that's just completely opened up for me. So there's kind of like something really kind of fun about that I
want to go back to the talk about the pass. One of the things, multiple different areas in the game that is really so nicely done is passing first. You get first draw at that stack of cards to choose from, which is very powerful, right? I mean, going at the end, you're just kind of left over with what's going to be probably the third or fourth worst card. But first you get that first card. Sure, you're passing up on a bunch of other stuff, but that's a nice balance and reward. You also see that with the signals in each of the different sectors, right? The first people in there get an early reward, but it's the last people who break the ties. It's the last people in there. And so there's this nice balance where if you're there first or you're there at the end, you're not punished for either of those. So there's little rewards that bring you along the way that make it worthwhile to always be engaging with the process, right?
Yeah, but passing first can be painful. And I remember playing with Jordan his first game, and he kind of he went through all his resources in the final round really quickly. I think he had some high value cards, and he just he did them. He did his big move for the final round, and then he was kind of done. And then Matt and I kept on playing because we had built up.
You and Matt played the game.
Yeah. And so he was there. I think he contends that he was waiting half an hour. I think it was more like 20 minutes. But either way, it's not fun to have to sit and wait. But it's one of those games. The same thing happens in Terra Mystica or Gaia Project, And so part of the game is kind of pacing things out. And what was interesting in the game, we just played a game, the three of us, right before recording this. And Trey, what I really loved was that you were kind of you were playing around with the sort of things you could do in this game. I sensed like you didn't necessarily do the exact kind of thing like go for tech right away. You were really good about saying, I'm actually going to try to buy cards. And
there's a card market in this game.
Yes.
And the publicity that you collect can either be used to kind of purchase techs, which give you minor advantages or minor capabilities in your exploration, but you can also spend 3 publicity points in order to buy a card from the market. Right. And I think when I was first playing this game, there was enough going on that I couldn't really pay attention to what was going on in the card market.
Same.
And I was I'm determined now. And I think also in our first plays, nobody was really using 3 publicity in order to buy a card. I think everybody was just chasing tech.
People would, and even I've now played the game I think 5 times, and people still once in a while they'll do that. But the reason what I was getting to this is because you did this and you were focusing on changing it up. And another way that you changed it up is I noticed in the early game you spent a lot of your resources early on cards that were really expensive, so you risked going.
I kind of had a
two
action first turn, first round,
but
where I was done quite early.
So I think some of the game is knowing when are the rounds when you do kind of like a shorter round, but you're going to do like a big engine building round, but it'll be shorter, versus the ones where you're like, okay, let me try to get like little piecemeal things to extend this as long as possible. And so if you get that timing wrong, I think this game can kind of crush you, as what happened with Jordan, which is that he did his big exciting thing and then had to sit and watch and slowly deflate as we kept on playing.
And I think that changes over the course of the game, right? I mean, I think having a short, fast round early, it's not great, but it's not a big deal. But in round 4 or 5,
I didn't win today.
Correct. But in round 4 or 5, if you pass early, you're dead. You misplayed it.
You probably have. I would say that, because those are critical rounds where you are trying to the amount of stuff you can do towards the end of the game versus what you can do in the beginning. It's crazy. I remember, when I first played the game, I thought like, how am I ever going to do anything? Because I don't have any resources.
Feels tight.
It's super tight.
Feels like it is, and yet by the end of the game, we've done so much.
I also think though that like this is the comparison to Terraforming Mars is really important because this is a card-driven game, and I think when I first played it, I kind of had the feeling that the cards were kind of supplemental to the stuff that was happening on the board, and it's not that at all. Like if you are spending all your money just doing the stuff on the board, like launching a probe or landing or scanning, if you're just spending your money on those actions, that's the equivalent of playing Terraforming Mars and playing all the
basic actions.
The basic actions instead of you want to find ways to do those things through your cards, and
you need those little efficiencies.
Because the first time I played this game, I got wrecked by this game because you don't have those. You need those little efficiencies. You need to find the ways to work it. And I was 100%.
I totally fell into that trap today. Like just that first choice where you're deciding what card is your economy. Don't be like me. And they even say in the rules, don't use a card as your first.
Yeah, random card draw is one of the possible
incomes. Don't choose that. You need to choose energy or money.
Yeah,
you have to. Because
I believe them when like if you're an advanced player and you understand, then there's probably a way that's going to be okay. But it's not recommended for beginners, and also like it is especially tight on money and energy early on. So you really do kind of want to.
Yeah, I mean, because you start with 3, maybe 2. And so an extra one of that, 3 or 4 is huge, right?
Income is incredibly important in this game. At least to get something set up in the first few rounds. And I remember I also didn't know how to. I struggled with the first 1 or 2 times I played this game to make sure like to get that income going. And a way that you can easily get income in this game, there's 2 ways that you can most reliably get it. One is you have your little computer, which is where you take the data. When you scan the stars, you get data, which are these like
Analyze
blue.
It. Yeah.
And so you get these blue tokens and you sort of put them into your computer and there's rewards. And one of the rewards you can get is to tuck a card and get income. So scanning and getting that data is a way to get income up. But another way to get income in this game is that you can orbit a planet. So when you have your probes and you're going, we've talked a lot about going around in the solar system because the probes, when they can travel all around the solar system and the board rotates and all that stuff. But when eventually you'll land on a planet, and chances are you're going to want to, engage with that planet. And so you can do one of 2 things. You can either land on the planet, and when you land on the planet, you will find a trace of an alien. And the other thing you can do instead is you can just orbit the planet, and you don't get a trace. But when you orbit, you're almost always going to get income.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of times when you're new to this game, you see the trace and you're like, well, I need to get the trace because it's a race to find the aliens.
We're racing to trace.
There's 3 types of traces. Did you mention this? I know you mentioned traces, but like there's like a trace from scanning the stars, a trace from landing, and a trace from analyzing data.
Right.
So
3 different colors.
3 different, basically yellow, blue, and pink. So you're like, oh, well, I need to get my trace. But I think that is a trap as well sometimes. I think it's really important to
especially early.
Yeah, because orbiting is cheaper.
It's a trade-off.
It's
completely viable. You are racing for those initial traces because you want to get in on the initial alien discovery because there are solid rewards for that.
Yes.
But also, like a lot of Euro games, getting your income engine going early will pay off long term. Yes. One thing I want to talk about before I forget it, that I think this game does better than any other game I can think of, is like we've played a lot of Euro games and we know like one of those kind of rules is that early points are for suckers. Mm-hmm. Like that happens in a lot of games. If you're not building your engine early and then you get your points later on, like I'm going to get to the point where I'm now converting my super engine into points. Like that's the thing that we do all the time in Euro games. This game allows you to, as Mike Kananak would say, Prefontaine it a little bit. Prefontaine, kind of a famous distance runner who was a front runner, which was always considered to be bad strategy, but he was still very successful doing it, where got out in front. This game can reward you for early points. Mm-hmm. And it does so in a really smart way, which is they have these kind of landmarks or thresholds that you hit as you get points. Early points are rewarded by allowing you to basically choose first place in a scoring category, so that like if the category is, we're going to count the number of sets of different colored traces that you have together. Well, if I'm the first person in to choose that, I'm going to get 11 points per set of 3 traces I have or something like that.
Yeah.
And the second person in there is going to get 8. So you are essentially getting a point engine by scoring points
Yes.
early. And so that's a very important, and so that's smart.
Yes.
Like it's not.
Yeah,
that
it goes back to what I was talking about with the passing and the scanning and stuff like that. They thought about, and to your point, better than certainly most Euros that I've played, where the early action and the late action both have different rewards and different balances. Unlike, like you said, you play Terra Mystica, and if you get early points, you're a sap.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Whereas here, that's one of the most important races that we're having is like, in this game, like we all want to get in on this particular category. First one to cross, what is it, like 25 points?
Yeah.
Something like that.
It's going to make a huge, it's going to make a huge difference.
So in one wrinkle to this, which is cool, is that in a fewer than 4-player game, there are these neutral dummy things that are going to help you discover the aliens. And basically, what it means is when someone the first person to cross a certain point threshold, like maybe 20 points or something like that, or 15. The dummy player is going to basically claim one of the 3 traces that's needed to discover an alien, and that's actually consequential because
it could ruin your plans.
It's happened before. Like, I'm working to get that red trace, and then all of a sudden Trey earns points, and now the dummy player took my red trace opportunity. And so the race for points has a lot of different impacts on the game state, which is really cool.
Took your red trace and the alien revealed, and you totally missed.
You missed your opportunity to get like the perks of being one of the people that discovered the alien.
Yeah.
So that's like a very
Well, why don't we drill down on that moment too? Because I think this is kind of a unique thing about this game is that part of the random setup in this game is that you are going to randomly determine 2 different alien races that are in the game, and you don't know what they are until you actually discover them. Like
There's
right now,
only 5 in the
there
box,
are 5 possibilities. You're going to get 2. And I think part of the promise of what this game is delivering is that each of these aliens promises and kind of delivers on a different type of gameplay based upon what gets revealed. And that you need to pivot fairly significantly based upon which aliens are revealed, because they're going to reward different things. They're going to change the way the game is played. And that feels like kind of a radical, innovative thing that I can't really point towards in another game.
Well, I think it's that. Yes, I do think it's innovative. There's like shades actually of Twilight Imperium in the sense that, like, as you play the game, new objectives like will be revealed, and you realize, oh, I have to do this now. So there's a little bit of that. Shackleton Base, coincidentally, came out the same exact time.
Right.
Sort of had a similar thing with instead of aliens, there are corporations, and every game has.
You know what corporations are in.
Right. So
that's part of the random setup.
Yeah. So I think what's interesting with SETI is that you don't know.
Yes.
But it's just funny that these 2 games both came at the exact same time, and they both basically had this idea of like the box has a certain number of like modules, and you're going to have a random collection of the modules in the game.
It feels like it's due though, right? I mean, like we've all been playing enough Euro games where you can sit down and have in your head what it is that you want to plan out for the whole game and roll through that. And everybody's kind of going, what if I can't plan for that? What if I need to adapt on the fly to these things? And so that we're seeing a wave of this readaptation makes sense, right? Because we've all kind of been steeped in this for a while.
I'd say if you like really know this game well, then you probably can prepare yourself for the pivot.
Yeah.
Like Battlestar Galactica was a game a little bit like that, of like there's going to become a certain point where the game's going to pivot in the middle, and you need to be ready because you honestly don't know whether you're going to be human or Cylon in that game until the pivot. So you can't go too hard on human because you might in fact be a Cylon. Not that that's exactly the same thing here, but anyway, this is a very exciting design space, and I think everyone who has played and like today it was kind of like, ooh, we got the miners and the Centaurians, and I'm not going to do like spoilers of what that actually means. It's fun to discover these things, but I think Chris, you and I had played a game a couple of months ago where the miners came out and we were our initial impression of them were a little disappointed.
Yeah.
Where it's like, oh, I don't see how that's going to work. This feels bad. None of these cards are working for me. But from our play today,
you totally crushed it.
Well, it came out early and like we could fully engage with it. And at least so far, like every of the alien races that have come out have kind of been an interesting form of gameplay. And I think also people that play this, you immediately can kind of project out of like, oh, as this game progresses, there are going to be expansions.
Exactly. Well, that's what's nice about this modularity. Also with Shackleton Base too, is this idea that they rather than having to do like a whole thing where they have to redesign the entire game or whatever, they can just do some fun packs.
Yeah.
Where here's some new aliens, here's some new corporations, and they can really impact how you play the game, which I think is a really cool thing. Like, I think it's cool to have like a plug and play new experience. You just like, you plug it in here. I will say this. So one thing I really like about this alien situation is that you really have a distinct first act in this game. Like, you know, I always think the best games have like a 3-act structure, just the way a movie would, like any storytelling, right? Like there are certain board games that like you start, you do the thing, you do the thing, you do the thing, and then it's and then you see where your points are, and those are like fine. But when you feel like a game has a first act and then a second act and a third act, that's, I think, always really good. And this one has a very, very defined first act, which is that, you know, you're doing this stuff until you find the aliens, and the aliens usually arrive by the end of the second round.
Yeah, about a third of the way through.
Both aliens. I mean, you could theoretically have one not appear till the third round, but usually it's going to happen.
And there is a gap between when the first alien appears and the second.
Yeah, and they designed it in such a way that you get more points. Like there's like an alien on the left and an alien on the right of the board, and the one on the left will get you more points for discovering it first. So usually that's going to get discovered.
You always
first,
discover the left one first.
And that kind of like, because it gets discovered first, usually the people who discover it first start to like then utilize the alien's capabilities first, so you have an interesting kind of spread on the boards. But I do think it's really cool that you have this first act space where you are just kind of like deciding. You're not sure what your game is going to be, but you're deciding.
You're reacting to the random setup. There is some random setup of the board,
and your cards
are going to push you in heavy ways, but you still don't really know what kind of game you have until that first alien flips.
And it goes back to the theming. That first act feels like we're small and it's just here on Earth, and
discovery.
We're going out into the solar system and discovering things, and then the aliens come, and by the end of the game, it's just like, oh, I'm reaching everywhere and I'm doing all of these things. But that first act feels so small and so simple, and just welcomes you in. Oh, this is, I do one action and then it's somebody else's turn, and then they do one action. It starts off so comfortable and welcoming.
Now, I also think, like, I'm excited to see what future aliens there are, because I think that there's like a lot of room to improve with the aliens as well, with what they do. Like, it's fun what they do, and it's interesting, and they work in different ways. But one thing that I am missing from the aliens is I don't feel like there's any kind of alchemy that comes from the chosen two aliens being in the game together. You know,
interesting.
They're kind of independent.
They don't really interact that much. I had a card today that said something like I would get points based off of my contributions to the other alien. So there was a little something there.
That was an alien card.
Yeah, it was an alien card. But like, generally speaking, you know, I'm not trying to overly compare this to Shackleton Base, but it's just like a very close reference point for me. But with Shackleton Base, I feel like, depending on the corporations that are in that game, you're going to get very interesting interactions between the corporations, because the card play is also designed to say, they have a lot of cards in that game that say everything you do you get points here if you do things there with those corporations and stuff like that. And what I would like to see from these aliens is some more interaction where I think the combinations of the aliens, if they create different chemistry, then that gives the game it gives the whole idea of the aliens, I think, some more legs, because otherwise it's just like there's 5 aliens, and once you've seen all 5, you've seen all 5, and it's cool and they're fun and I enjoy them, but you don't get anything more than those 5. Whereas if you have 5 aliens, but like when these two are paired together, it creates this kind of game. Where these two are together, it creates this kind of a game.
Interesting.
And so I would like the aliens to have some sort of interaction with the game experience as
that would be. I mean, you could totally add some cards in an expansion to.
It's just about
drive
like the
that
cards
more, for sure.
100%. I think that's what the next set of aliens should do, and I think it's probably pretty.
And
easy
they can
fix.
even reach back to these first 5, right? With that first expansion, they could come back with cards that tie different pairs of them together differently, right?
I think there's like a way to become more ambitious with these, and I think that like by design they're probably not they're not too ambitious in what they do because they don't want to like make it too convoluted of a game. But I think once people get their reps in of SETI, like I think people will be ready for more ambitious.
It's
aliens.
a very midweight game. I mean, it looks intimidating and there can be a lot of pieces, but like in terms of the overall kind of scope and decision making space, it's definitely midweight for me. At least.
You're not completely overwhelmed. I mean, we had a pretty thinky game.
I think it's more than midway.
We often do though.
Yeah, I'm with you, Ben. I don't think it's a little heavier than maybe you're letting on then, but like you are limited.
We did just
like
play
you can't just plan it all out. You are a certain amount. You're dependent upon the cards you draw, and then a lot of times your turns are little, and then you have the mega turn. Like you had a turn this game, Ben, where you completed 3 different alien objective cards.
Four alien objective cards.
4 alien objective
and
cards.
another alien thing and a public goal thing. All
I
at
would
once.
say if you're comfortable with terraforming Mars, this is a little heavier than that, but not like leagues heavier.
I think it's I think
Terraforming Mars is pretty meaty.
Okay.
it is meaty, and it's just we played it so much that we've sort of forgotten how meaty it is because I think for a lot
That's
of
fair.
us we were so used to
That's
it.
fair.
But I think I remember the first time I played this game, and my head was literally spinning, and I'm saying the word spinning because the sport spins. But I was like, I know everyone's telling me, oh, you just only do 3 things. But I was like, why is it that just these 3 simple things, I could not grok it? Like I was like, huh? It was so hard for me that first play. And like now I get it. And you just kind of have to go through a rough first play a lot of times with this game. A lot of people have a hard first play, but like there's just something about how these things all interact that for me, I could not wrap my brain around like there's moving the ship and then there's landing, but then you're also trying to scan, and like the actual things you're doing are not hard, but synthesizing them as like trying to forge a path forward was pretty heavy for me.
When you're first playing, I think like scanning a sector of space feels a little unsexy. And it's hard to see, like, what is this actually doing for me?
And what do we get? Like, this time I get this reward, but then this time I don't get this. And do I get publicity this time? Do we all get publicity? Is it per thing? Is that? It's like a lot of things.
I came in second. Why? What is? Oh, because you finished last. So, I lost all that. I think I had more positive first play, and I was even.
I loved my first play. I'm just saying I was.
Chris, I think
totally
you really
confused.
loved your first play.
For sure.
I mean, you can be kind of like overwhelmed by the choice and still kind of like, but this is a fun ride.
You destroyed us your first play, I think, right?
No, I don't think I've ever.
No, you did. It was. Remember, we were playing at the.
I didn't win. The Little White Chapel. No, it was. We were playing with Mike Nicholas.
Oh, Mike won.
Mike won. Yeah, Mike.
Yeah.
Mike.
Yeah, Mike crushed us.
Mike.
No, I did fine. Like, I think this is one of those games, like today's game, I felt like I did not win, Ben, but I was really enjoying what I was doing. Like I had looked at certain possibilities. I explored the space. The plan kind of worked out. And honestly, like the game came down to one of the alien mechanisms, which is that one of us, turned out to be me, was going to be penalized at the end. And that was the deciding
There was a push your luck
determination.
thing. Yeah. And
so that was very exciting, where it felt like it looked like I was going to be the one to lose that race, and it did, in fact, turn out to be true. But it was closer than we
it was way. For a moment, I was like, "Oh my god, I am actually going to lose this thing." Yeah. And that happened to me once before with those aliens. I was like, "What?"
So I thought that was really interesting. And again, like my initial impression of kind of like the miners had been, it doesn't look so great, but it actually was quite good.
Yeah, I
want to see what it actually looks like for the thing you have in your head of like how the aliens interact with each other, because I was thinking about like the play between the two of them this time was the nature of the miners was that most of the value of the miners were in these cards that we played secretly, and that there was a press your luck thing as opposed to the actual like alien board itself.
Yeah,
because there's a lot of scoring on the alien board, but I think that because there's negatives associated with the miners, it tended to push our scoring options when we had a choice towards the other.
The other board was basically full.
Right, but I think that's because the Alien board pushed it that way. The miners pushed it that way,
Agreed.
and most of our scoring was hidden. So, like in my mind, I'm like, to me, that's kind of an interesting interaction between the two of them there. But I don't think that's exactly what you're talking.
He's looking
about.
for explicit call outs, right?
I'm like looking like something that is like, wow, in this game, I can't even articulate it, but like there are certain, I think, modules in other games that we could, if we think about it, we could probably come up with some good examples where it's like, oh, when these two modules are at play, the game, like the emphasis and the thrust of my game and how I play it has been really changed versus I'm still pretty much doing the same thing. I just have, I can just,
I can imagine
this.
more like, for example, if you have Alien A and B in the game, now all of a sudden planetary scans are easier.
Or this thing gives a power, and so suddenly, like, we care about. I mean, here's a really simple example. Think of like Isle of Skye. Remember that game by Alexander Pfister, where everyone's building like tableaus or like tiling, making landscapes, and you're going to score the landscapes. But every game you put out like 5 different random scoring conditions or 4 different random scoring conditions, and different ones score at different times of the game, and then they in different ways. It's really clever. And but based on what those scoring conditions that come out, you're going to build radically different landscapes because, like, oh, I care about sheep, and I also care about like rivers. So now it's like I'm building a thing like a rivery sheep thing, and so it's just in a way that, like, I feel like the aliens in this one create. It's like kind of in some ways a very, very fancy version of if you just have like different end game goals, I guess you could say, which is that really reduces it down. Like they're more than that, but it's not. It doesn't create an experience that feels wholly different from one to the other. In terms of like,
I think that's not true. I actually, but to what you're asking for, I think there's another level that isn't being explored. Right, like the game we played today was very different than the first game you and I played. The feel of it, and that's because we had a miner in both of them, but the second Alien was quite different. One was you were putting things around the board, and the other one, this one was cards. You got more cards. The cards totally drove your victory, and you pivoted wonderfully, Ben, to shifting to that mechanic.
Those are really good. I don't know if but I'm saying, like, I could have, if it had been a different alien race there, it still would have had. I feel like they add fun texture to the game, and I really like them. And I feel like it's like, ooh, here's a cool different, gimmick that we can play with. And I don't mean that in a pejorative way. I don't mean like, it's just a gimmick, but like, here's a cool lever to play with. But their interaction together is not creating something greater than that. There's 2 new levers. And I think that all I'm saying is that if those aliens could interact in some way, if they were designed to somehow, then you could actually, it would be it would be more exciting to say, oh, this is a game where this alien and this alien are together. How are they? Wow, I can't imagine how this game is going to
get some really cool stuff.
I think so.
Like when an expansion comes out in a year, we're going to get some cool.
Right, and I guess what I'm saying is that, like, I feel like I saw that with Shackleton Base, so I'm like, I can see how it can be so good, and so I'm excited and I think it will go there. And this is like ultimately what I'm saying is more of a quibble, because I still think the alien stuff is really good, but I want more of that. I want the game to like unlock new interesting depths depending on which aliens are in there as a combination.
I totally get it.
Now I'm curious, going back to the mechanisms of the game of like moving your probe around, scanning, doing the data. Those are kind of like the big 3, and then there's card play. But like, how do you guys feel about how those mechanics interact with each other? Because what's so fun with this game is that on BGG, people are always complaining that like one of them is either overpowered or like, oh, you have to do this, or like, why would you ever go scanning? Scanning's underpowered, or oh my god, the data's underpowered. Where do you guys feel on these things? Is there one that's like stronger? Do you think that they all work well as like a balance?
I have no idea. Like, I think I think I have 4 plays. At this point, I still feel like I'm exploring the space of like the idea that you have to do certain things seems really premature. Mm-hmm. The only thing I would say to someone coming into the game is to be very careful in doing these, kind of like scanning the sector thing, because it is the part of the game where you can kind of get snaked and lose a certain amount of your investment. So it that has the potential for the biggest kind of like feel bad part of the game. Like you staked me on a sector early on in this game. I was like, I know that that's what this game was. And that was a sector that actually wasn't that important to me. Like I developed it more in pursuing a different sector because of the way that scanning works. So like I was okay with it, but I would say like on your first play, I might stay away from that just because it can be kind of a feel bad, I want to quit type of moment. But the rewards for it can be quite good. So I think we've, along those lines, it feels like when you are first playing this game, people have a tendency to go heavy onto probes. They think the game is about launching probes, moving your probes through the solar system, landing on planets. And and that's fun. And that feels like a lot of games that we played. Is that actually the most rewarding? Well, if your cards aren't kind of like rewarding that, if the rewards in the game, the different categories we're going to compete in aren't rewarding that, then that probably is not actually the most
I think
efficient.
it's hard to do all solar system movement.
So I think I'm kind of where you're at. I feel like I'm way too new to be able to say, this is the right way to play or the wrong way to play. Where I'm actually feeling right now is I haven't figured out how to make the orbiting and landing into a strong in-game mechanic yet. And I feel like it's probably in there, and I have to figure out why I haven't been able to see that happen yet.
Well, you get pushed and pulled in so many different directions. And what always surprises me in this game is that I've really not been able to flog one thing. Like if I'm like, okay, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to send out a bunch of orbiters. I'm going to do all my tech is going to be about like sending things out. I'm going to do all that. But then the cards that you get, like you don't have the card support. You can't. You need.
But you know what? Like my favorite game of all time, Agricola, is exactly that way. Which is like you have the like I'm going to be planting vegetables and grain, or I'm going to be raising livestock, or I'm going to be building a big house. You know, there's a number of different ways you can go, and like is one stronger than the other? No, but you like to pursue any of those well, you have to have card support. And like I'm going to plow a bunch of fields and do a bunch of grains. Like if you don't have the cards that, you know, like if you don't get a plow in your draft, like then you're going to be beating your head against a wall. It's going to feel very slow and very inefficient because you don't have the right card support. And I think that's Agricola with its occupations and minor improvements, those are probably bigger levers in terms of like the effect you have on your engine, whereas these cards feel like they're little efficiencies.
Yeah, but
you were scoring a lot of points. Like you were doing, like you were scoring points on your sector things. Like you were just racking up points on your scanning all the time. I did it. I wanted to. So I thought I was gonna be doing like an orbiting game because one of my first missions that I pulled out was like when you go on an asteroid, you'll get this. So I got tech to go on asteroids easily. I was like, okay, I'm gonna be doing asteroids, publicity, technology, and then all of a sudden, like I got sent in this path of collecting a lot of data, and then all of a sudden my data thing was constantly filling up, and I was getting a lot of data points, and so it's to your point that like. You need to have the card support because this game resources are incredibly tight. They're tighter than you can even imagine. You don't get anything, and it's by design. And that's why if you had a lot of resources, it would be too easy to move along throughout the solar system. And if it's too easy to move around the solar system, then rotating that board doesn't really matter. So you need that free movement that comes with the solar system. And so then everything has to be tight. And that's why if you decide what your strategy is going to be, like irrespective of what the cards are going to be, you're going to fail. You have to say, okay, my cards are telling me I can do this right now. So, well, I guess I'm going to scan because I have the support here and I can afford this. And let's see what that gives me. Because everything can kind of like feed into itself. But I'm surprised that there really are just kind of like 3 areas that you can really do things in this game, which is move your probes around and land, or you can scan the skies, or you can analyze your data. And then the probe and sort of the scanning and the data stuff is kind of really connected, whereas the stuff in the space is just sort of space stuff. But I think what I'm surprised about is how you're really just sort of choosing 3 different things to do on any given turn with a few variations, and yet the game experience can be very different from game to game, which is like shocking.
Yeah, my initial impression right now is that the scanning and data play is the stronger, early, obvious technique to build an engine that works really strong towards the end of the game. But I don't think that that's necessarily innate to the game. Looking through all the cards that I saw, over my plays, I see a scan and probe game that can work, right? Like I've seen the cards where I'm like, oh, okay, I haven't connected them all yet in a play. I haven't gotten enough plays to really understand it, but it's in there and I know it's in there. And it feels to me like, to the point of what we opened up with the, the random card as part of your energy, I can imagine down the road when I fully grasp the full game, that extra card so that I have that extra action so I can do a thing is going to come into play, but I have to know the game way better than I do yet.
Yeah, that was in my particular game this time. That was definitely part of the fun, which was that by the midpoint of the game, I was drawing 3 random cards as part of my income every round. And so
That's
getting
big.
those, it's not just powerful in that there are more cards and they're by themselves, those are resources. But it was also like, that was a fun puzzle of, let's see what I got. And now I have to completely reevaluate. Like I had a general idea of what I wanted to do coming to this turn, but I just pulled these 3 cards. And now all of a sudden, hey, one of these cards I pulled now makes one of the cards that's in the card row, in the card market, extremely valuable. So I just felt like, oh, that's an interesting puzzle at the beginning of every round. So even if like drawing random cards may not be like the strongest from just a power point of view, it was definitely strong from a player interest and how do I take these different elements and make a good combination out of them. That was a lot of fun.
It definitely brings it to the Terraforming Mars place too a little bit, where it's like you got your cards at the beginning of the round. You're like, okay, what am I going to do? What do you guys think about the variety in this game or replayability? Because something we talked about at the end of our session was that you guys were afraid that this game may be like samey or whatever.
It could get a little samey. That was a concern of mine. This game felt very different from my previous place, so I could still feel like with the 5 alien combination, I might feel like I had kind of seen everything I'm going to see after 10 plays, which would be awesome.
Yeah,
to get 10 plays out of a game. And then I'd be ready for the expansion. Yeah. So that feels fine. I am definitely like ready to play it again right away. And I think there's very few games that actually offer a higher level of replayability. Like again, Agricola is like one of the most replayable games ever because of its highly, that card system with all of the cards makes it so random every single time it plays so differently. But, I don't think anybody be concerned that like I'm not going to get enough plays.
I'm less concerned than I was after initial experience,
but not completely.
But I'm not completely.
Yeah,
it has that potential, but I'm fascinated to get to that point. Like I'm really enjoying the plays for sure.
Yeah, I think I think the game actually can get samey, and I think it is samey. But this is a weird moment where I say that's not necessarily a bad thing. Because I will say, when you said, can we get another play in of SETI before we did this episode, I was like, sure. I wasn't that excited to do it because I played it already 4 times, and there's just I've got some new trinkets here, like Galactic Cruise, and I've got some other games, and there's some other games I want to circle back to first. But I was like, I always have a good time playing SETI, so I was like, sure. And I think the sameness. I think the reason why I wasn't that excited is because there is sort of samey. You're always going to have like a first act where you're kind of like going to do this. Maybe you'll drop an orbiter, or maybe you'll scan, and then you do this, and you're doing some variety of scanning, and you're doing all these things. And kind of at the end of the day, it's sort of it's like all in pursuit of putting your plastic down on the board and scoring points where you put your plastic.
Right.
I hate to be really reductive, but I'm just saying, like, theoretically, that's kind of all you're doing. But when you look at a game, this game reminds me of Terraforming Mars in more than just the card play. Terraforming Mars, if you think about it, is also kind of samey, right? You're kind of you're trying to boost those stats.
And who doesn't have dozens and dozens of play of that? And
you sort of go through the same arc with Terraforming Mars. You sort of do the same thing every single time, but the process is so fun that you do it. And like when I played this game, like I wasn't excited necessarily to sit down and play it today. But like almost instantly, I was like, this game is so good.
I do wonder if we're gonna go down that Terraforming Mars road, like that game was in danger of being more samey until they did the Prelude expansion. Like the different corporations that you play with, where you have starting asymmetry, make a big difference. And I'm wondering whether that's a similar evolution that the expansion is going to have here in this game.
Yeah, well, it's interesting.
I'm not sure I'd want a really strong push in a given direction, but maybe it might.
There's
work
like no ongoing powers in this game. You have text that can help things, but like there's nothing in this game that says whenever you do this, get a this. Whenever so that's
the economy
gonna
is
come down the pike.
much tighter,
but
it's so much tighter.
I think that this is not like this is just my way of saying like sometimes sameness. We sometimes get so obsessed with sameness that we don't realize there's actually value in sameness. And I think like with Terraforming Mars, it's fun to see, you get all these cards, you can build a mega engine, right? And that's what's so fun about Terraforming Mars, in my view, is that like you're going to see how this all works together, and you're going to.
But it needed Prelude.
Yeah, to Trey's point, right?
Actually, for me, it didn't. But but your point remains. But like for me, it didn't. But like I get that
the addition of the expansions and the more cards, the sameness in Terraforming Mars is in the kind of reductive points of you're doing this, and you're doing this, and you're doing that. The concern I have for the sameness of this game is that the problem space is small enough that right now I'm afraid that data and scanning is in fact the best way to play every time. I'm not disabused of that notion yet. I hope I'm wrong.
Why don't you win a game pursuing that strategy, and then we'll talk.
I was second. I was ahead of you when the game that we played with Mike. Like I was questioning you, and I did data and scanning to do that. And this time I didn't do data and scan. I know. But my point is that I'm worried that is actually, that's what I mean by why I'm worried about sameness, is that are there paths that
will just
are the right paths to take?
Right. And well, I think the cards, the stack of cards is so big that's going to
I hope so.
the thing.
I hope I'm wrong.
I think that's the thing that gives texture to every single game.
The other thing that Prelude did for Terraforming Mars is that it took too long for the engines to ramp up, and Prelude kind of jump started the game in terms of like, you're always talking about the act structure. To me, SETI is taking a little too long. Mm-hmm. Like I really like it, but it also like we played today with 3. I think we were really glad we didn't play with 4.
Yeah.
And if there was an expansion that would just kind of like accelerate the game so we kind of got into it quicker and finished it quicker, that would probably be desirable, because it's as much as I'm liking it, it did run a little, it stayed around.
It feels like a game though that it's going to get much faster with more familiar play. I mean, we're all still in the low handful account plays.
I don't know. I mean, I don't know.
I mean, think of Terraforming Mars. We've all played dozens and dozens of times at this point, online and in person and everything like that. Like all of the actions,
and I'm not going to play a
doing
5-player game of that in person.
Right.
But
not doing it.
I mean, by the way, speaking of which, like interaction in this game, I mean, we talked about how there are a lot of races, and then you're keeping an eye on what people are doing as like the solar system moves, etc. But I think that like most of the interaction in this game is a little bit more on the subtle side, because the races are like you are racing for certain things, and you're racing to, especially for the scans and everything. But there's not a lot of like massively dynamic interaction in terms of where I am on the board is going to impact what you do, etc. It's more just like, oh, am I going to be able to get that card in time? Am I going to be able to take that space in time? Whatever. And that's nothing wrong with that. But I think that also, I think some players may want like a little bit more, like person on person interaction. So that I think could be something like if you're into something that's like a little bit more brutal, then this game might not be quite as appealing, and the game might feel more samey to that sort of person instead, because if they're not getting a lot of dynamic interaction between players, and said it's just like racing for certain things, which is very Euro-y, then like that's sort of like there may not be as much of a decision space.
This is not TI4. It's not.
Yeah, it's not even Hansa Teutonica.
Yeah.
But
this game is pretty well reviewed in terms of like looking at the games from 2024 and where BGG has them. Like this game actually has a higher ranking than Arcs. I think Arcs is more polarizing, where I think it has like people that love Arcs, and people are like, that is not for me. Whereas I think probably most midweight Euro gamers are going to be like, SETI, good game, solid game. I think that's where it's at, but it's already up to, like 131 on BGG.
But it's also got like I think it's got a much bigger like the bigger print run, so a lot more people know about it or played it. And I think it's also like it's a game.
SETI's more reviewed. I mean, SETI, is not as reviewed as ARCS. Like ARCS actually has more reviews, but
I think that like SETI captures the imagination. It looks beautiful. It's big. It's beautiful. It's really fun. The theme and the mechanics align seamlessly and perfectly. And I think that like the drawback for me with SETI is that there is like a sameness about it, but it's almost like, but then once you start playing it, that all melts away because you're in the puzzle now, and now you're just trying to make it work. And like the dealing with the cards and dealing with the solar system, and then you get like the extra sort of fun of the aliens. It works really, really, really well. And like of these games of like the Terraforming Mars, the Ark Nova, SETI, Terraforming Mars to me is still the number one of this genre, but I put this above Ark Nova personally.
And I think we've been digging into the parts of the game that we're concerned about a lot over the last little bit here. But I want to play again. I'm excited to play again. I'm enjoying the game for sure. So I think even though we've been kind of talking about our concerns of it, overall, my impressions are still very high for the game.
Yeah, right. I think we would all say, like, if you're a Game Brain listener and if you made it this far into this podcast, like this is a game you absolutely should play and form your own opinions about. It is definitely worth playing, even if you find that like this is not going to be a game that you're going to play 20 times.
It has a lot of upside too. Again, like the potential for expansions, both aliens, but adding like a prelude thing or just anything. And they also have like, there's a lot of upside for like sideboards, other like you could have something like a board that this is just like the Jupiter thing, and they could have its whole other world there. Like they could really build this out in so many exciting ways. So I think it's, for me, I had ranked this as my number 5 favorite game of 2024, and I think that's like the perfect assessment for it, which is like a super, super strong game that is like a top tier game. Like in another year, it could have been number 1, but there is that sameness issue, for me, it's just the sameness issue and the aliens. Like I want a little bit more dynamic interaction between the aliens, but minor quibbles. And I think it's a really great game. Also, again, visually looks great. Rulebook is excellent, by the way. I want to point that out. Player aids are, for as much as what's going on.
You'd expect that from Czech games.
Like for as much as what's going on in this game,
rule books.
Any question you have while you're playing the game, you can almost always find on your player aid, which is like, I want more player aids to publishers to follow, because they did a really great job with this. So I think the three of us all really enjoyed it, right?
Yes. It's my number 2 game.
Your number 2 of the year. What was your number 1 again?
Harmonies.
I still haven't
and
played
really
it.
This is more of like my game. I just like, I recognize that Harmony, I really enjoy Harmonies, and I'm like, I feel like it's gonna get a really major audience, especially over time. It's such a hit with so many, much bigger pool of gamers are going to play Harmonies than SETI. But SETI is my kind of game. And again, like I love things like Zolkin. I love it when you have some central design thing that really engages with the mechanism and the theme come together. And this falls into that.
And when you pull
category.
off something big in this game, it just feels great because you work so hard for every little resource and every little thing, and when you do it, and
that mega turn you had, that had to feel
it was wonderful. And I had a few mega turns, and just like and especially because you are just trying to like you're just trying to do it just right with your resources and making sure nothing can be disrupted by other people. And when you actually get to do it, you're like, yes, it feels like deeply satisfying. So great game. And that's it. That's it for the episode. So thanks everyone for listening. You've been listening to Game Brain, produced and edited by Matthew Robinson, Tom Donnelly, Trey Alsop, and Ben Mandelker. Special thanks to Daedalus for incredible music. More on Daedalus at GameBrainPod.com. And thanks to Adam Marpellik for incredible graphics. You can reach us by email at contact@GameBrainPod.com. Thanks for listening, and go play some games with friends or make some friends with games.